Hello, all. I'm Ben Moser, President and CEO of the United Way of the Chattahoochee Valley, and I'd like to welcome you all to this conversation about the importance of voting. At United Way, we believe that the exercise of our voting rights is essential to the preservation of our democracy, and that it is also a great privilege that we enjoy as Americans. Because it is a right, but also a privilege of our citizenship, we believe it must be respected and utilized effectively to ensure that we, the people, use our collective power to steer our nation in a productive direction. With me today, I have the fabulous Barbara Joy Tillman to discuss voting, voter registration, and related issues. BJ Tillman is a senior at Brookstone School in Columbus, Georgia, where she is an honors student and involved in several school organizations. BJ's passion is seeing teens become involved in the voting process. In 2019, she founded a nonprofit organization, Your Voice, Your Vote, where she obtained permission from the Muskogee County School District to go into local high schools to register seniors to vote. She and her team of volunteers have registered hundreds of teens to vote over the past year. She also maintains voter awareness through Your Voice, Your Vote social media. Thank you, BJ, for joining me today to discuss the importance of voting in tomorrow's election. So, BJ, when did voting become important to you?
Well, first of all, Mr. Moser, thank you so much for having me, but it's a pleasure to be here. I've always been pretty interested in the political process, but it wasn't until I started working on a Senate campaign about a year ago when I really realized the power of the youth vote. So then I began to study the youth vote as it impacted various elections. And with that, you not only realize its power, but you see that young people are not showing up in the polls as we could and as we should. So with that, as a 16-year-old high school student, I decided to do something about it. And that something was founding Your Voice, Your Vote to ensure that my peers are registered to vote and they're equipped with the knowledge and resources to make a difference in various elections.
Well, that is awesome to be doing all that at your age. And so how many voter registration drives have you done so far?
Well, my team and I have done around 15 throughout all of the high schools in Muskogee County, and also through community events like clothing drives and protests. So around 15.
Wow, that is great. I mean, amazing work that you're doing there. So do you remember how many new voters you have registered to vote through these voting drives that you've done?
Absolutely. So we've registered, my team and I, approximately 400 in total, with roughly 300 of them being young voters through high schools and other stuff like that. So yes, sir.
So do you also ask questions, like do a survey of them when you're registering them to vote and gather data, things like that to inform your process moving forward?
Well, usually a lot of it just comes in person when I'm registering them in person. I might ask them some questions like how old they are, and they're usually really excited and in tune and wanting to get registered to vote and vote in these elections. But some of them do take a little bit more persuasion. So that's kind of where our social media piece comes in, so we can remind them to vote and make sure that they're equipped with that knowledge so that they can actually get out there and do so effectively.
That's really great. So if early voting is an indicator, the polls tomorrow will be extremely busy. We've had a lot of early voting so far in this election. What should local voters know before they go to the polls tomorrow?
Absolutely. What I would say in short is be prepared. Adjust your thinking to understand that you will likely be there for a while. Get your schedules and your attitudes adjusted. You may want to have some refreshments, a chair, and depending on the weather, some adequate clothes. And if you're voting on election day, make sure you know how important your vote is. Rain, sleet, snow, stifling heat, I would encourage you to hang in there. Your vote then is just as important as it is on a beautiful, mild, sunny day with no problem. So do not be moved. And I would say to those people that are in those long lines tomorrow on election day to make sure that your voice is counted and heard at any cost.
Well, that is great advice. So national elections, of course, are very important, and everybody's really excited about the presidential election that we are engaging in early voting and tomorrow. However, local elections are just as important. So BJ, if you could talk a little bit about local elections and why it's necessary to vote, not just when there's a presidential election, but in other elections, local elections that come up every year.
Absolutely. I actually love that question because that's something that all year through Your Voice, Your Vote's first year, I've been trying to emphasize, especially among young people, especially in this environment of social unrest. I've been trying to connect those dots between justice and voting. And that I really do believe that comes in through local elections. Of course, the big national presidential elections are important, but when we're outraged seeing local officials not being interested in justice, when you have judges not being interested in justice, or you have sheriffs not condemning police brutality, we really have to look back to our voting and who we're electing in those positions. A lot of people in general, and young people as well, don't understand that a lot of these local officials, like your sheriffs, your judges, even coroners, mayors, even, they are all elected officials, and their offices have more hands on all of these issues than we could really even imagine or that we tend to think about. But I always say these local officials have the power to hold your freedom in their hands. When we talk about these DAs not prosecuting, or if you agree or not, we really have to make sure that we're voting in these elections and that our voices are present. Because if not, then I think that's dangerous. And I think that local elections, making your voice heard on a local level and not forgetting about that just for national elections, I really think that's how we bring about permanent change.
Yeah, absolutely. So many great points in there. So we have seen a movement of younger people who cannot vote yet become engaged in social and political arena in many ways. Why is there such an interest from your generation in these political issues of the day?
Well, I will say that my generation is very in tune with what's going on in social media. So there's a constant barrage of information about events. So when something happens, good or bad, we know about it instantly. So with that information comes a lot of emotions. And so we have a lot of young people that are very emotional about these happenings on both sides. And so people like me are wanting to translate that emotion into action. And there's actually this quote that comes to mind with that question about young people getting involved. It's from President Barack Obama. And I think that really resonates with this topic. And he said, change will not come if we wait for some other person or some other time. We are the change that we seek. We are the ones that we've been waiting for. And I think a lot of young people are desperate for change. And I think that they realize that they must take it upon themselves to act. And one of the things I always say is don't just tweet about it or talk about it, but what are you actually doing to bring about real and tangible change? And I think that this change that my generation seeks and is so desperate for, I do think that it comes through voting.
Excellent. Yeah, that's great. Amazing points there again. So after high school, what are your plans? You seem very interested in politics. Are you thinking of maybe running for a political office one day?
Well, I'm not sure. As you can see, I'm very interested in the political process. However, I'm not exactly sure where that road will lead me. But I do know that the field that I wish to work in would have to work to secure justice and equity. So I know that much about what I want to do in the future. But as far as the specific career goal, stay tuned.
President Tillman, perhaps?
Perhaps.
As we wrap up this conversation, tomorrow is election day, and it's been labeled as the most important election of our lifetime. BJ, what are your final remarks for our viewers as we head into this monumental election tomorrow for our country?
Well, I would say to you voters that this is an incredibly important election. I believe that there are so many things that are on the ballot beyond just candidates, but I also want to underscore that every election is important. Do not feel like you have to come out for only this election because it's just so incredibly important. Every election is important because every elected official is important. So come out and vote for this election. Don't be deterred, but continue to make sure that your voice is heard after this election as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you, BJ. We wish you the best. We really appreciate you coming on today to talk about these issues with us. And you've got my vote for sure if you do run for office. So thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.